Hallo alle zusammen, einen wunderschönen guten Abend. Heute Abend, an einem Mittwochabend, ganz ungewöhnlich für Irish Whiskys, zu einem Livestream einzuladen, aber es hat irgendwie kein anderer Tag gepasst. Umso mehr freue ich mich, dass schon einige Leute hier sind und wir heute Abend das Dirtgrain Tasting Set von der Blackwater Distillery vorstellen werden. Der erste eigene Whisky der Destillerie. Und natürlich darf der Destillerie-Eigentümer dazu nicht fehlen. Und deshalb ist Peter Mulryan von Blackwater Distillery heute Abend mit mir online. Hi, Peter. Great to have you on board for tonight.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I just gave a short introduction of yourself, that you were the head of the Blackwater Distillery, and but maybe you can introduce yourself a bit more.
Yep, I'm Peter from Blackwater Distillery, and I'm one of the co-founders of the company. I'm also CEO, which means I kind of make decisions, make the coffee. We're not a big distillery. So hello everybody out there. I'm seeing names pop up. I can't see what Marika could see. I can't see who's out there, but I it's good to know that people are out there.
Yeah, there are people out there. That's good to know.
I will try to speak slowly. Unfortunately, I only speak a bit of French and Italian, and I don't speak any German. So and Irish, but I can do it in Irish if you want. But
no, thank you.
I'll just speak slowly.
Irish not that good.
If I speak too quickly, shout.
Yeah.
So quick bit of background, and then we're going to show you a video. The distillery was set up back in 2014, and there's a picture up here. There you go. Of the stills. We started producing whiskey in 2018, and this first release, what you have is the press pack. This is the real thing. And I'll come back to why we did it like this, but this is the first release of the Dirtgrain project. So Blackwater's the distillery. The project Dirtgrain was about bringing things back to the grain, back to the dirt, where soil, where every story begins, whether it's the rain coming down or the wheat and the oats and the rye growing. And also because we do most of our distilling involves other grains, not just barley or malt. And I'll come back to why and what we're doing a bit later on. So we're based in West Waterford in rural Ireland, where I am now. We're by the Blackwater River, and it's a very, very rich farming area. A lot of our grains are grown locally, particularly barley and oats. And it's all sort of dairy farms around us. So all our grain, our spent grain, gets moved out by the local farmer and fed to his cows, which are just up the road there. So we're quite small. We have a team of 13 people. Our head distiller is John Wilcox, who is American, who unfortunately can't be here tonight because he's in the Faroe Islands. That's very John, if you knew John. And I'm looking forward to going through our first offering and telling you about some of our plans for this year and indeed for the future.
Yeah, so we start the video first, I would suggest. Yeah, great. So I just need to find it. I'm not really good in presenting. Sorry. Jason does that much better than I do, but we get it. So
Irish whiskey should be made from Irish grain, grown and malted. Simple. We hereby assert our right to resist the dumbing down of Irish whiskey, to celebrate what's authentic, to embrace tradition, to look to the future. We choose to be transparent and to trust our senses, to value the distiller above the hardware, the brewer above the software, and above all, the farmer and the maltster. Mostly, we want to make the kind of whiskey we want to make, to represent the true character of people, provenance, and produce, created from the very beginning with an obsession for flavor. We believe in grain over cask, the power of the mash bill, and never forget, Irish whiskey belongs to us all. not the select few. Let the grain reign. Sehnst du dich nach mehr Glück, Gesundheit und Zufriedenheit? Hast du...
Okay.
That's us. That's us.
Yeah.
So the idea was behind a manifesto. What is a manifesto? A manifesto is a statement of intent. I think we're the only Irish distillery that has set out their rules, the rules by which we work and which we can be judged by. And the manifesto appears on every box, which is why this is called the manifesto release. So that's what this project is about. And instead of bringing you one bottle, we decided we'd show you 4 different iterations to show how important grain is. So we've made about 30 separate whiskies using different mash bills. That's not cask types, that's actually recipes. About 30 different. So you've got 4 in this box. And we picked these 4 because for 2 reasons. One, historically, the mash bills are spread across a big space of time. And secondly, because they're all quite different. And sometimes with whiskies, they can be kind of similar. We wanted to pick 4 that would be really, really obvious that what we're saying is true. What we're saying is that it's the power of the grain. And if you change grains, the best analogy would be bread. You can buy white bread. But if you change the grains and have a mixed grain bread or a heritage grain bread or a brown bread or a rye bread, it's going to taste different. And essentially, beer, whiskey, bread, they're all very, very similar. They're all a grain-based food product. So that's the background to the manifesto project.
Yeah, very good. So I shall say greetings from Julia to the whole team. I have to tell you that.
Hello.
And Barry says a very nice pack and very interesting little whiskies. Yeah. So shall we
start
with the tasting and then you're explaining a bit more?
I will. So the box, the manifesto box, comes with 200 ml bottles. There's the grain. And there's the manifesto printed on each side of the box. And inside there's going to be a little card just telling you a wee bit more about the mash bills. But all this information and more is contained in a book, and you'll all have the book. This is the book, and it goes into great detail about why we do what we do. So
what I really like from the book is that you put out the years of the mash bill and then wrote in the main things that happened in this year. I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, because history can be dull, but everything happens in a time and a place. So, for example, the very first whiskey we're going to go looking at is 38. So you want to get that ready. Why historically this is interesting is because it's from 1838. So the hashtag just refers to the year. So 1838. So this is pre-famine. Okay, this is what I mean about history having an impact on how food and drink were made. If you look at the book or you look at the mash bill, you'll see that it's 40% wheat, 40% barley, and only 20% malt. Tiny malt content, which makes it quite difficult to make, and the yields are quite poor. But we know it's an actual real mash bill from before the famine in Ireland. And it's therefore interesting because of the high wheat content. And you won't see this post-famine because famine in Ireland in the 1840s, when it killed about 1 million people, had a huge impact on the country and indeed on the world. But after the famine, it wasn't seen as proper to make whiskey out of wheat. Wheat was human food, wasn't suitable for spirits, particularly at a time where you have the temperance movement growing in Ireland. So you've got two things happening. You've got society going, now wheat's food, you shouldn't be giving it to the devil to drink.
Yeah.
And then temperance movement going, it's the devil's drink anyway. So this is really unusual. We won't ever make it again because the yields are not great. All the grain in this is Irish. We don't import grain. It's all grown for us specifically.
Okay, very good.
So,
Yeah, so Oliver from Tramgood says, talking about mash bills is normally a USA-related conversation. It's very interesting to start this in Europe. And I think
do you know why that is, Oliver? It's because of the famine. So what happened was, in Ireland, 1 million people left the country. Most of them went to America. And when they went to America, what do? They brought their technology with them. Brewing and distilling are Ireland's only indigenous industries. So when the Irish went to America, they went with their idea of a mixed mash bill whiskey. They went with this kind of whiskey. And in the States, they met a lot of Germans, and the Germans brought their brewing technology, particularly the use of rye. So suddenly, rye isn't that common in Ireland. The land is just too rich, too good. You get rye on the West Coast. Where we are around here, that land is too good. So the Irish went to America, started brewing, started distilling, started using all the knowledge they had learned in Ireland about how to make whiskey. So they used wheat, they used rye, they used barley, they used whatever they get their hands on, corn. So this is where the story begins. This is the genesis of Irish whiskey and the genesis of American whiskey.
Yeah, very good.
Have a taste.
Yeah.
See what you
So,
think.
as I told you before, I smelled just the whiskeys this afternoon and just saw the numbers and didn't recognize the cask finishes. And on that whiskey number, I said, this is apple. And this is kind of like a cider, apple wine. And then I saw apple brandy and was like, yes, you got the smell from the cask. So really nice smell.
See, when we made this, we were the first people to make this in almost 200 years. So we had to relearn how to make these whiskies because Irish whiskey is not made this way anymore. And we didn't know how it would taste. So John, our head distiller, thought it was kind of appley and kind of fruity from the grassy wheat. So we decided we'd use apple brandy casks to reinforce that. And that's what we did. So it's American apple brandy because there's no such thing as apple brandy in Europe. American apple brandy casks, and John is American. He sourced them from people he knew, and we put the whiskey in. Whiskey's between 3 and 4 years old, so it is young, but it just demonstrates the power of grain and the interesting flavors you get when you move away from malted barley. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Yes. So I tried.
You may need to add water. I have no problem. Add water if you want. It's absolutely fine.
Very interesting.
It's quite green and grassy. I hate tasting notes because we all taste things differently. So what we've kind of done,
my opinion.
We just put in the headline stuff. So we have down ripe apples, pear skins. That's there. Earthy roasted spice and hazelnuts. So it is quite unusual, and we do know that. And that's the whole point of this exercise. I mean, where else are you going to get this kind of whiskey? Because you're not, because it's not economical to make it. It's too difficult. It's too expensive. And it does taste quite different. And the other thing to say is it's perfectly all right not to like all of these whiskeys. It's perfectly fine. If you like one, I'd be happy. What's the ABV? This is 47.1. Each bottle is a different ABV, a different strength, and again, deliberately. We were toying with the idea of cask, and we thought, you know what? There's a bit of machoism about cask, in the way that there's a machoism about peat levels. Cask isn't necessarily better. So what we thought we'd do and we did this with Julia Norney, is we went and we tasted everything at different strengths until we found one we thought suited the spirit best. So each of these expressions are bottled at the strength we thought showed them at their very, very best. So that's why they're all slightly different.
So very interesting. I have the apple, but a nice, quite different spiciness. And what I got at the first sip, I was like, is there a kind of peat or smoke? And then you said the roasted hazelnuts, and this is it. It has a kind of a, yeah, let's say maybe a kind of a smoke. And then you get the apple. And then let me say here, Sasha says, wow, sweet and sour cream apple, like the Apfeldinger from Haribo. No, they are from Polly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Alcoholic Haribo.
Okay, then we have a simple, nice whiskey. This is good. And then let me see what more is coming in. Interesting to see more grain-driven whiskies in Ireland, like Blackwater, Cologne, Waterford. Also, they all have a different approach to the subject. Yeah.
Well said, Alexander. Yeah, we're all slightly different, but we're all exploring a similar vibe that's been kind of forgotten about. So yeah, it's nice. There's lots of room for experimentation. So this was at the time the oldest mash bill we had found, but since then we found an even older one from 1824. So that's going to be, so we're going to release that next year as a 5-year-old. We did make it, it'll be 5 years next year. So that'll be released as a 5-year-old, and it's totally matured in fortified wine, because bourbon wood wasn't used at all in Irish whiskey until the 1950s. There was no bourbon wood. Irish whiskey was exclusively aged in fortified wine casks. That's sherry, Madeira, Marsala, port. And where we are, people are very, very, very sweet toothed here. And we have a big port in Cork and a big port in Waterford. And we had importers on the south coast here. And they used to import an awful lot of port, huge amounts of port, much more than sherry in this part of the world. So they had quite a sweet tooth. So that whiskey will be aged in a variety of fortified wine casks, and that will be coming out next year.
Yeah. So for Holly, whiskey boss Holly, she said it's too sweet, and I think I can't get the sweetness. I'm sorry. I really get the spiciness. What Barry says, because he says the spiciness from the pot still spiciness, and I think this is totally correct. I'm sorry, I do not get a really sweet taste of this whiskey. I don't know why. For me, it's fruity and it's spicy, but it's not sweet.
Yeah, so that's why I hate tasting notes.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, so the barley, that spiciness that you get in a modern pot still comes mostly from the unmalted barley, the raw barley, and there's 40% raw barley in this. So if you think about it, 40% raw barley, 40% wheat, and only 20% malt. So there's a tiny amount of natural enzymes going in from the malt. So the yield was pretty poor. It was hard to make, but you got to try these things. You have to experiment.
Yeah. So Julia says there aren't too many brandy casks. Chapeau. So
yeah, you're right.
Know it. Yeah. Here we have another tasting note: sweet apple and spice. But Barry is on my side. He also says sweet. So
well, maybe Julia can tell us, because
yeah, maybe Julia, do you think this whiskey is sweet? So maybe, yeah.
I mean, people when they taste apples might then go apple equals sweet, because apples sweet fruit. So I can kind of get that too.
Yeah, but I get more these green apples, sour apples. Okay, so you are really right with the tasting notes. can't get any sweetness.
Okay. Well, that's the first one. Should we
That's
move
the
on?
first one, just the first one, and we are totally different. So that's good.
That's the point of the exercise. That's the point. The second one, we're going to go forward in time chronologically, is the 93. Again, it's from 1893. So this mash bill is interesting for two reasons. Firstly, this is the peak of what Irish whiskey would have tasted like during the first boom. So the Victorian period, when Irish whiskey was the biggest whiskey in the world. What did it taste like?
Okay.
Tastes a bit like this. A bit like this.
Two more things. So Julia also says it's more fruity than sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
And Aaron says, nice one, wonderful mixture of apples, barley, vanilla, and nuts. Yeah, I completely confirm that. It's like smelling an apple strudel and then having a piece of nougat in the hand. So it's a kind of dessert.
Yeah, nougat nuts. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, yeah.
And Sasha is asking if you can buy just a bottle of the Mash Bill 38.
Now, what we're doing, not at the moment, no, because basically there's 1,000 manifesto boxes. We do have some stock left over because obviously it isn't exactly, a cask each. And we're playing around what we do with it. And I'll come back to that later on because we're looking for some feedback. We are going to bottle a small amount of these, and John calls it like a legacy library, and they will be released at some point in the future. But at the moment, we're all in a bit of a tizzy, so nothing much will happen. So we move to this one if everyone's happy.
Yeah.
So this is this is, as I say, a mash bill from the boom period. So you've got a lot of barley going on, 46% barley, good bit of malt, 35, and then you've got 20% other grains, 15 being oat, and then a little bit of peated malt. Now the peated malt, there's no way of knowing if they use peated malt or not. They probably didn't, but when John made this, he made it without peated malt, and then he said, you know what, it kind of just needs a little bit of something on top, like salt on an egg, as he would call it. So we put a very small amount of peat in, only 4% peated malt.
Okay, so what I would like to know is you have on each bottle you have names for the grains like husky oat, gangway malt. What are these names for?
That's the variety. So basically, people talk about oat, they talk about barley, they talk about wheat, but there's a huge difference in the variety that you use. Now, these are modern varieties. So these were not around in the Victorian period. So that's why we call them out. We said, this is what we've used. These are the varieties. Now, we've also made some of these whiskies using heritage grain. So that would have been with the grain that was around at the time. Mm-hmm. It tastes completely different. It's remarkable. Like we've used 3 heritage grains, Hunter, Goldthorpe. Now they're both, Goldthorpe is Victorian, Hunter is early 20th century. And we use one called Old Irish, which isn't a variety. It's landrace. Landrace means it's open sourced. It's just whatever the farmers were growing in the fields at the time to give them a yield. It's basically grass. It's when John saw it, he just laughed. It's like this hairy, little tiny little thing, hairiness. But wow, they all are completely different. So that's why we've given the varieties on this pack.
Okay.
And again, because there's a bit of heritage going on here, this is matured. There's some sherry wood here because sherry wood and fortified wines would have been the prevalent casks used at this point in Irish whiskey.
But it's interesting. When I just poured it, it was like just cherry sweetness. And as longer as it is in the glass, you more get a kind of a peat note in the nose. I wouldn't say it's a peated whiskey, but you get kind of a peat note.
Yeah, like we say here, a leather satchel, pepper, and spicy smoke. It's at 43.1%. 43.1%. There's a lot going on here between the sherry, the unmalted barley, a little bit of peat, And this is the first time you've met oat. And oats really is the unifying theme in Irish whiskey. So the first one was unusual. It didn't contain oats, but most every mash bill we have from 1823, when you have proper licensing, up until the 1950s, all contained about 15-20% oat. The lack of oat in Irish whiskey is very, very recent and goes back to the days of monopoly production in Ireland. And that's all, again, in the book.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I totally confirm. The intensity of peat is always surprising. Yeah. Just a small bit of peat, and you really, it's like here, Holly says it supports the whiskey.
Yeah, that was actually what John said. That's why we used it. Now, on the peat, this is Irish peat, and it's malted for us by Irish craft malts. They have a farm where they grow, and also at the back they have a bog. And this is their own turf from their own bog, and it's a pretty primitive system. If you want to go into our Blackwater website, if you go back one or two blog posts, there's a blog post and photographs all about these guys. And don't ask me for what the phenol count is. We have no idea. We just haven't a clue, because they're small, they're a craft producer, and every variety, every batch is different. Now, this was an early batch. It's quite punchy, but I like it. It's quite different.
Yeah. It's nice.
Yeah, and it's nice to smell peat smoke that isn't Scottish.
Yeah, I hate peated whiskey. I really hate it. And when I smell a Scotch peated whiskey, I feel bad. So
really?
I cannot drink it. But I totally agree with you. Irish peat is different, and I think Irish peat is much more drinkable, much better. It's not like staying 3 days in the mouth after tasting it. Yeah, that's my point. And this is something I like here. Yeah, definitely.
Any other comments from what people think?
I thought God says he loves oats. Yes, I can confirm. I really like mash bills with oats.
Yeah, really, I mean, there's more oats coming up. Clove, I'm getting clove too. I'm getting clove as well.
And the others they are still writing, so we need to give here are coming more great information on Irish whiskey history and the development of grain usage. So Dr. Whiskey, really likes to know a lot about history. So
you're in the right place, Doctor.
Yeah, he's an historian. So
all right. Well, the book's a good place to start, the manifesto book, because it kind of gives a context for the project. Because another point of this is that none of these whiskies are compliant with the modern definition of single pot still. But at the time, they were all compliant. They were all sold and recorded in the revenue accounts as being single pot still whiskies. So there we go. So we've made something that actually historically is accurate, but legally we can't call it. So we're trying to change the technical file so that these can be called what they are, which is pot still whiskies.
Yeah, so maybe you can give a bit more detail about that, because for both of us it's normal, but I think there are lots of people here watching. They just know the big ones of the pot still whiskey and don't know that this is also pot still whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very, very I'll try to keep it simple because it's complex. But in 2014, they introduced a definition of Irish whiskey in EU law. So it's the law. And the definition for pot still Irish whiskey was set by Middleton. It's how Middleton make it, the Middleton method. And Middleton is as much an outlier in history as is our high wheat. There's nothing like Middleton anywhere previous to 1970 when they started making whiskey. So it's a bit of a disgrace that a company gets to design a GI around their own products. Oh, and funny, look, Redbreast wins the best pot still. I wonder why, because they've defined the category in terms of what they make.
Yeah.
So we have been railing against that. That's what the fist is about. Where's the fist then? Where's my fist? I've lost the cover of my box.
This one.
Yeah, there's the fist.
Yeah.
And the Che Guevara. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what we're making legally can't be called pot still whiskey. But as I say, historically, it's exactly what it is. So we're trying to make a point.
Yeah, we definitely have to.
Oh, I'm sure it'll change, because if they don't change it, what we do is we just go to the EU and we say, lads, the current definition can't be defended. There is no defense. And when Irish Whisky PLC go to find the proof, there is no proof, because it's a crock of shit, and it'll just embarrass the entire industry. So it needs to get sorted offline. If it doesn't get sorted properly, then we'll just get the grenade and
yeah.
it in.
Yeah. Because I think it's when I started 11 years ago with the business, and I think I'm into Irish whiskey since about 13, 14 years, and it has changed so much, and I think now it's the time that this is also going to change, and that we bring even more of a variety into the category of Irish whiskey, so that we can say Irish whiskey is not just smooth, fruity, and vanilla. It's much more. And the irony, Marika, is that this mash bill here, if you were in Australia or America or Germany, you could make this mash bill and you could call it a single pot still whiskey. Yeah.
So you could do something in Germany I can't do in Ireland with a historically accurate pot still mash bill. It's complete bonkers.
Yeah.
It's complete madness.
Definitely is. So we got more tasting notes, and I would like to share them.
Yes, please.
So Sasha has porridge moment with peers. So it's a breakfast whiskey. Yeah. Dr. Whiskey says historically accurate and legally questionable, even better. Yeah. But we need to get to the point that it's not any more questionable. So, yeah. Jürgen confirms that there are peers, and I thought God likes your book.
Excellent.
He read lots of your books, I can tell you. So not just this one. Light smoke with cinnamon and spice.
Cinnamon, yeah, it's good.
And then we have a longer one, totally different. Yes, it should be much more earthy notes, leather and mild pepper with the peat. Stays in the background, but can definitely be found in the nose as well as on the palate. Yeah,
Aaron, that's the whole point. Each of these four are completely different. So as Marika said, we need to be in a space where everything doesn't taste like a cheap version of Green Spot, because that's not what we're about here. We're about a consumer, giving the consumer a choice. Nothing wrong with Green Spot. No, it's great, but there are other drinks are available.
Yes, and this is what I see here is that still there is a point that on trade shows or in tastings, there are people coming and say, I haven't been into whiskey, so everybody told me I should start with Irish whiskey. And I think it is fine, but Irish whiskey is not a whiskey just for beginners. It's whiskey for everyone, and we need to get that in the minds of the people.
And that's one of the lines in the manifesto. Irish whiskey belongs to us all, and it does. It does. So we need to reclaim it from the multinational.
Yeah. We are on the way. Yeah. So next one.
Of multinationals. Right. This one's good crack. This will be kind of familiar to you. Now, this is from 1908, and from evidence given to the Royal Commission on Whiskey. So this is the time when we started getting legislation controlling what things were called, the beginning of consumer legislation. So in 1908, when we were still part of the United Kingdom, a royal commission was set up to investigate and to define whiskey. So they did an amazing amount of work, and they spoke to a lot of people. And they spoke to John Power of Power's Whisky in Dublin. And in his evidence that he gives to the Royal Commission, he's defending Dublin whiskey, which was pot still whiskey. And in that evidence, he gave a mash bill. And that's pretty much the mash bill he gave. So that would have been kind of what Powers were making in Dublin in 1908. Again, our whiskies are not triple distilled. They are double distilled, because triple distilled, whatever they say, just gives you more ethanol and gives you less of the field and more of the cask. So we want to lean back into the field, lean back into the grain. And one of the ways of doing that is to distill to a lower level. So we get the liquid coming off the stills 71%. If you triple distill, you get to 90, 89, 90. So yeah, it's much lower. So this is a good one. I think you like this.
Yeah,
familiar.
I'm a bourbon cask fan, so it just from the smell, this will be my whiskey. So
you'll find it, I hope, familiar, yet slightly strange and different. So, of course, all Irish whiskey would have been pot still whiskey until the industry collapsed into monopoly. So one producer owned every distillery on the island. That would have been Midleton and Cork and Bushmills in the north. And before everything happened in Midleton, all the smaller distilleries, that's Powers and Jameson and Cork, they all closed and everything was moved to one distillery in Midleton. When they did that, in the early 70s, they reformulated, they changed all the whiskies. So Irish whiskies were now mostly blends. So blends of continuous distilled whiskey and some pot still. And pot still itself was redesigned to contain no oats. It just contained malt and barley. So that only goes back to early 70s. So it's 50 years, but given the history, the thousands of years we have behind us, 50 years is a blink of the eye.
Yeah.
So this is a window into early 20th century Dublin whiskey, the style of whiskey that captured the imaginations of the world, the kind of whiskey that was being made in Dublin.
This is great. I really like the combination of these fruit notes with the grain and the spiciness. It's like, oh, it's really nice. This is really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So this, for your knowledge, isn't on the press pack. That's my apology. 45.3. 45.3. So 50% malt, 35% barley, and 15% oat.
So we got apples and porridge, very mineralic with vanilla.
Yeah, so, mineralic is a good word.
Sasha says, it seems like the Dirtgrain is breakfast whiskey.
That or you've got a problem.
Yes. Yeah, Feiger says minerals indeed. Some nice vanilla and a hint of citrus, but very basic and tame. Yeah. Very nice nose. Yeah, so we need to give some time for tasting it. Okay. It's bourbon cask. You have this fruity note, so I really like it. And it's when they say it's basic or it's vanilla, but I think here with the bourbon cask and this mash bill, you really get the mash bill. Yeah, the grains, the different styles. And what I also really like is that on all whiskeys, also you have chosen different casks. You really get the difference of the grains and the mash bills.
That was
the cask is not overpowering. Yeah.
Also, in this one, if you leave it in the glass, and then when it's in your mouth for a while, what I get after a few 30 seconds is dried dark cocoa. It's like dark chocolate back here. I just get it back here like a kind of dark Bourneville chocolate, sort of high cocoa. Could be just me. It's an aftertaste. I get it as an aftertaste.
Yeah. And the aftertaste, you get this kind of a bitter cocoa. Yeah.
Yeah, really bitter dark cocoa.
Yeah. So, and I totally confirm with Julia, an expert in barrel allows a whiskey to shine as it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And what we've done recently, as Julie will know, is now the vast majority of whiskies go into bourbon casks. And then we see how they perform, and they get jiggled around after maybe 3 years. And that is apart from the whiskies that are exclusively aged in fortified wines. So there's less messing around with casks now. Our policy is clearer because we've made the whiskies now since 2018. So we know them a bit better.
So, okay, I here getting more fruity pear and later pot still spice. I have some floral notes in the nose combined with malty and fruity notes. Big fan of this one. Citrus, kind of mineralic, dark chocolate, slightly peppery from earthy and vanilla notes.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah, really good. The mash bill comes by the taste. Yeah. And he says no to Mareike. I want a single cask selling from 38 or 8 for the Irish whiskey we get this year. Sasha, I would prefer, number 8 is fine. Maybe, no. But maybe we can arrange something with Peter that we could do. Or he's releasing something later in the year that we can add to the Irish Whiskey Weekend. So
we are. I want to involve you guys as well. We haven't finished. There's one more. Each of these is 200 mil. So you're getting 800 mil.
We're getting more voices for a single cast. So we need to be careful.
We are working on some single cask releases. Absolutely. Yeah. So single cask releases at cask strength, and then therefore people who know their shit and they can add their own water.
Yeah. Okay. So my favorite so far is mashed.
Okay. Let's move on. 15. Again, an interesting point in history. This is 1915. So this is from during the First World War, and at the time, as I say, Ireland was part of the British Empire. So Ireland was very much at war, and Irish horses were being sent across from the ports in Ireland to the battlefront. So oats were really common in Ireland. They were cheaper than barley, and they were horse food. So you find an awful lot of oats in whiskey. And there's, again, 15% oats in this. So I think oats is Ireland's gift to the whiskey world. If you look across history, 15 to 20% oats is there most of the time in most of our whiskies. And it just softens and gives you a lovely kind of creamy porridgey taste. It's a bugger to work with. As anyone who's made oatmeal or porridge will know, leave it in the saucepan. What will happen is it just turns to kind of glue. So between oats and rye, which is even worse, these are difficult whiskies to make. Yeah. So this one is lovely and interesting because it's from rural Ireland. So we had the 08 from Dublin. This is from a small distillery called Almonds in Bandon, County Cork, in West Cork. And again, there's a picture in the book of the actual mash bill from the grain room. Few things interesting. One is there was a vague idea of what a mash bill would be, but every time they did a mash, the quantities would vary because they were practical people and they had sacks of grain. So they'd take approximately that amount of grain and, there's a half a sack there. We'll just put that in too. So it would then be no doubt blended out in a big vat at some point in the future. So we just picked one of the iterations we thought was interesting. It's interesting too because it contains all 5 permissible grains in Irish whiskey. That's barley, malt, oat, wheat, and rye. So they're the 5 grains. You can't use pseudo grains in Ireland. You can also use corn if you have a continuous still. I'll come back to that. So they're the 5 you find most often in Irish whiskey. And they're all in this whiskey to try. So go for it. Tell me what you think.
It's like orange marmalade.
Yeah, we have orange blossom collides with intense dark chocolate, plum and warming tropical notes, kind of oily. A lot of our spirits, they're kind of oily because the stills are small. So it's kind of a house style.
Okay. So,
oh yeah.
Claudia says, love this one. Maybe it's the oats, feels creamy in my mouth. Yeah, this is what you just explained.
44.2%. 44.2.
Give me a most mossy smell, quite foresty. Yeah, it could be also foresty, yeah, but I just had orange.
Yeah.
And here's green peppers and a barbecue moment with vanilla. Very nice. Okay. And we have one more question. If you do distillery tours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. So they can get in contact with the distillery and then they can arrange a tour.
This to me was surprising. The most surprising of all. I don't know why, but I'm quite fond of this. I like all of them for different reasons. I would say this might be my favorite. It's
very already said also that it is his favorite, and I know in the live stream with Jason most people like number 15, but I think I would stay with number 8.
See, this is a great thing. You don't have to like all of them. You can like more than one. This is the whole point. Everything can be different.
So Julia says that's her favorite from the 4th. The rye berries match perfectly with a hint of rye in the mash bill. The spices are smooth but obvious.
That'll mellow in time. I mean, the spirits are young. That will mellow in time. But yeah, I think it's interesting because it's kind of different, but it's kind of familiar. But it presses a lot of buttons, which I like from other world whiskies, not necessarily Irish whiskey, but all the ideas we exported to other countries. Funny, we have them here in Ireland in 1915.
Yeah. Aaron says, trip to Andalusia, a lot of orange in the nose. Yes, that's what I say.
Yeah, loads of orange.
Oats are the secret of Dirtgrain.
Oats are Ireland's hidden superpower.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So this whiskey has most spice, love it. Yeah. Oat, orange, slightly floral note, nice herb notes. Yeah. Then we have a lot of staying power with this one won't leave the palate. Great stuff. And a question, what rye was in the barrels before?
John would know. I can't remember. I don't know. I think it would have been a Maryland rye because John worked in Maryland. So he would have got one from his pals. I can't remember. Remember.
And Holly says her favorites are 8 and 93.
See, I love this. Everyone's got different favorites because everyone's got a different favorite biscuit. Everyone's got a different favorite coffee. One size does not fit all. That's the whole point of the project.
Yeah. So I think, like you, they are very different all. If I would have to choose one favorite, I would take number 8. But I also like the orange moment, number 15. And I think the 93 was the one with Pete. I think this one would be like on a cold winter day. I would take this one. So it depends.
Yeah. But that's good because for me, whiskey is a mood thing. I don't have a favorite whiskey. It's kind of like what kind of mood am I in? What space am I in? What's the weather like? And then I go, oh yeah, I really fancy a Springbank, or I really fancy a whatever. It's driven by kind of where my headspace is.
Yeah. I totally confirm. It's always hard when people come on trade shows or in tastings and say, Mareike, what's your favorite whiskey? And when I say I don't have one, they say, no, that's not true. But it is true because it's totally depending on mood. And as you said, so it's, yeah, of course, maybe we have one go-to whiskey, but that might not be the very favorite whiskey. It's just a whiskey which you can just drink. And yeah. So Julia says this might be a wild turkey rye barrel, but
I don't remember, Julia.
Yeah.
No idea.
No idea. Barry says this box is whiskey history. We hope we need more stuff. Yeah.
History, liquid history in a box. Much more fun than school.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So here we have 93 as favorite. Jürgen says number 15. Stefan says 93 and 8. All 4.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We have one we were going to release this year. It may well wait till next year. It's got 55% rye, and it's a monster. It's an absolute monster. It nearly killed John. We don't have much of it. I think we did 2 or 3 barrels because it was tough work with the equipment we have.
Okay.
Which is not very scientific. But yeah, it's really quite lovely.
Very good. So then here it's definitely 38. Apple brandy. 50 was also really nice. And Claudia says number 15 and 93. So very good.
Yeah, that's great. So
yeah.
P.S. We're not quite sure what to release next as our first kind of regular release. With 2 options. If we have a Facebook group called Blackwater Republic or Whiskey Republic, and we're just asking people. I'll just say to you as well. We made some compliant single pot still. One of the first things we did, because if you're going to go mental and do all this crazy hard work, you want to know how far you have deviated from the standard. So we had to distill what was legally single pot still. And that's coming up to nearly 4 years old. So that's one we could release. It's the one and only compliant pot still. I think we've got 5 casks or something. So we could release that. Or another idea we're playing around with is to do all the grains. In other words, to actually go out with a blend. And a blend would be, that's what we need Julia's assistance. A blend would be a lot of different whiskey bases, like a whiskey made from oats and wheat and rye and grain, because we have made some whiskey from corn as well. Or even we might just get in some grain whiskey and actually just try to put together kind of a sexy, mature blended whiskey, which would be predominantly either all ours or mostly ours. I do have some casks of quite old grain whiskey, which I could use as well. So we're toying around with what to do. So if you want to go onto the Facebook group thing and put in any feedback, any ideas, seriously, we don't know what to do. And when John's back from the Faroes, we'll sit down and chat and talk to Julia. But we're very open to being nudged in a certain direction.
Yeah, sounds interesting. Both, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, both are interesting. It's just, yeah, it's the first regular release. So, well, what do you do? Do you just get the pot still out of the way, or do you hang on to that and just do a blend of a full Irish blend? So features every single grain, corn, wheat, oat, rye, everything all in one. No one's done that. I think that could be really interesting, and it puts the it puts the emphasis back on the grain, but it puts it on the distiller and the blender. So it's not really about the cask; it's about the constituent ingredients and what they bring to the story. So I don't know.
So I would prefer the blend, but from my personal view, from the sales view, I might go for the pot still. Sorry.
Anyway,
Does that really help? I know.
That's where we are. And just by and by, it's interesting. We have also done some triple distillation. I mentioned most of everything we do is double. I mean, 99% is double. We have done some triple. I think that'll be maybe next year's release. It's different. I prefer double. I think it just kind of works with what we do.
Yeah, it definitely drives the taste. So
Yeah.
I just think we tasted it tonight. It was really, really nice. And I think it's a great set. We have a few left.
Yeah, we've got it's sold. It's completely sold out. We have stock, just so people know. We stock with Mareike in Germany. We stock in the Netherlands with our importer there, Fourcroy. There's stock with Amethyst in the UK. That's it.
Yeah, so we have just very few left. And,
Very few.
Yeah. So you can get that on the website from us. And Julia is looking forward to help you no matter what you decide. So
I'm sure Julia will be part of the decision because I can't make my mind up what to have for breakfast. So.
Yeah.
It'll be whiskey though. Yay.
Yeah. No, it's she's doing a good job. So yeah. Very good. Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Peter. Are there any more questions to Peter, pot still, Blackwater Distillery? I really like it, and I'm very happy that you brought out this box with the non-GI pot still whiskey. So, oh yeah, and now we get some music. That's good.
I'll play us out, shall I?
Yes, you can play us out. That's fine. Yeah, thank you very much, Peter.
You're very welcome. I did think earlier I could just sit here and I could put a CD on, and because you can't see the mandolin, I could be playing anything, and you go, "Wow, he's really good." Do this.
Yeah, you're playing great.
Thank
you very much for taking your time and giving us this great tasting of the whiskeys. It was really interesting.
You're very welcome, and hopefully see you all again soon.
Yes.
Good night, all.
See you. Bye.